Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my first impressions review of My Hero Academia Season 6. So, some of you may be wondering why I'm not reacting to this like I did with previous seasons. Well, simply put, I don't feel the drive to anymore. While I still love this series and I still think it's great, I don't feel the drive to actually react to it. Because as I've stated on the channel in the past, reacting to something and just watching it on my own time are two very different experiences. Because when I'm reacting to something, I'm not just watching it, I'm also, having to actively react. I have to actively, I guess you could say, put on a performance for the camera and everything. The way I act, the way I think, the way I experience the series or the show or the movie or whatever is very different than if I were just watching it on my own time. And after the last season, while I loved the last season, I feel like it got to a point where I want to watch it on my own time. I feel like it would be a better experience for this series for me. Um, so I decided to do that with this season, but I still wanted to give you guys a first impressions review, and maybe if anything really notable, like makes me want to talk about it in the future, maybe I'll make another review here or there. We'll see. But in the meantime, let's talk about this first episode. So, previous seasons have done this thing where the first episode is this filler kind of recap episode in order to, bring everyone back up to speed, as well as to buffer it a little bit so that you just don't go right into everything before, you know, it doesn't want you to like really get into the meat of the story right away. It wants you to have like something a little softer, something a little easier to kind of just bring you back into the series after it had been however long. This season though isn't doing that. The first episode is it's just the first episode. It's the beginning of this war. And it really kicks off strongly. We get a bit of focus on Hawks and Twice and how close they've kind of grown together during Hawks's infiltration into the Meta Liberation Army. And we see them interacting, we see Twice being Twice, but we also see Hawks worrying about it because, as we know from last season, Twice kind of got over his trauma. And so he's, in Hawks' eye, one of the most concerning members of the army at the moment. Or I said Meta Liberation Army before, but they're called like the Paranormal Liberation Front now, I believe. The names are so similar, it's hard to remember which one's which sometimes. Especially since it's been so long. It's been quite a while since the last season. I think longer than it had been for between previous seasons. So yeah, there's also that. But we also then get an opening. And I wasn't sure if we were going to get the opening right away in episode 1 or if we would get it starting in episode 2. I hadn't seen it before watching this episode, even though it had been released and everything ahead of time. I'm mixed on it because the opening itself is good. It has a very cool stylistic art to it, to where it feels very different. It feels very comic booky. Like, the way that the art is drawn is very different than the actual art in the series proper. It shows comic panels and whatnot, a lot of onomatopoeia sounds popping up, like you would see in a comic. It's very much American comic inspired specifically, which makes sense because there's a lot of that inspiration within the show as well, or the manga, I guess. Um, but that's fine. What I don't like is that combined with the song. We're going into this war. Like, that is what we're going into with this season. This is going to be intense. It's going to be really fucking heavy. And it's going to be maybe even a little scary with what's going to be coming. Um, why is the song for this opening so freaking poppy and happy? It's so ridiculously happy sounding that it creates this extreme dissent between the opening and the actual content going on. Like, we're going into this big war, and the opening is going to sound like Barbie girl levels of bubblegum pop. It's seriously that poppy. It's like, it's not bad. The song is not bad by any means. I want to make that clear. I'm not insulting the song. But it's so unfitting to what's actually going on. The visuals are fine. I love the visuals. I love the stylistic choices they made to make it very comic booky. It very much focuses on what should be focused on for what's going to be coming up. Um, and maybe the second opening of this season is going to be a lot more intense, but honestly, the second opening of season 5 is more fitting in tone to what's about to happen than this is. The tone of this opening is so... It almost kind of reminds me of the opening when we had Gentle and La Brava, which during that arc, during that part of the series, it's like, yeah, you can have kind of a goofier, poppier opening that actually fits with what's going on. With the festival, with Gentle and La Brava themselves, like, that works. But having it here, when we're going into this massive war that's going to change the entire landscape of this series, having an opening that ridiculously poppy, it doesn't work. The opening is good. It's really good. But it is so ill-fitting for the series as of where it's currently at that it makes no sense, and it throws me off because of that. It's kind of the same thing that a lot of people have said with One Piece. It's like, oh, something exceptionally intense or scary is happening in One Piece. Then all of a sudden they play that cutesy music during the mid-card. Or even My Little Pony. I know I'm comparing it to My Little Pony, but in Friendship is Magic, the fourth generation, the one that came out in 2010 through 2019, like, there would, believe it or not, for those of you who might not know the series, there were actually some very intense and wild things that happened in that, especially during two-parters. It actually got pretty frightening a couple times, and pretty dark and pretty sad. And it's like the episode would end on a very sour, bad, or just really depressing note, and then it would just... the ending would play the really happy, cutesy, overly saccharine theme song for the series, which is fine as a theme song, but when you go from something that dark to suddenly just the credits start rolling and that theme song pops up, just blasting in your ears with all the positive energy, it is such a dissension there that it completely destroys the tone that the episode ended on. And that's kind of what this is doing for me. The tone of where this series is currently at and where it is about to be going is being hurt by the opening being so happy sounding. Again, the opening itself is great, but it is so diametrically opposed to the actual content of the series that it is distracting. And so I don't think I'm going to be watching it much when continuing this season. I'm probably going to be skipping it just because I want to actually enjoy the series with the tone it's going for, rather than be distracted by a song that doesn't fit. It'd be like watching The Boys and then having the opening play. I don't know what's a good example. Um, Oops, I Did It Again by Britney Spears or something like that. You get the idea. Just something very poppy, very bouncy sounding. I could have just gone with Barbie Girl, I guess, but Barbie Girl's lyrics are also kind of super sexual, and it's like, no, that actually kind of fits with The Boys, doesn't it? um, but either way, you get the idea. It is just so diametrically unfitting. But let's talk about the rest of the episode. So, the heroes, the police, they are forming this big attack on the Paranormal Liberation Front, and they have to do basically everything at the same time. Because if they try to do one ahead of the other, it would give away their position, it would give away what they're doing, and ruin the plan. So the first thing they have to do is they have to capture the scientist, the doctor guy, Garaki, I think his name is. Um, they have to capture him because he's the one creating the Nomus. He's basically been the right hand of All for One and is currently kind of acting in a similar manner with Shigaraki. So he needs to be captured. The second part of the mission is that the invasion of the headquarters for the Paranormal Liberation Front needs to happen. But both need to happen at the exact same time because, again, otherwise there could be problems. So the heroes, with the students as well joining in as support, and the police form into basically two different factions. Endeavor's faction is going to capture Garaki, and the other faction is invading. And we see that the heroes are kind of split up between the two sides, just kind of doing their thing. With Garaki's side, a lot of them are evacuating people from the hospital, while some of the more advanced pros are actually going in on the action and being, supportive for everything going on. And we didn't really see much of the other side in this episode, but we're definitely going to get that going forward. We see them confront Garaki, and he's a lot more cowardly than I expected. Honestly, I expected him to be a lot more composed, and maybe even have expected this and had been prepared. And at first, it seems like he's just going to be a cowardly git, and he's just going to be captured and everything very easily. While Mirko is sent to go to the secret lab that is only able to be entered through the morgue. However, when Mirko gets down there, she's suddenly attacked by a bunch of Nomus, seemingly without instructions, which is new because Nomus normally need to be instructed. At that point, they come up, and it's revealed that the Garaki they caught was a fake, a clone created by Twice. And it also kind of gives a little bit of information that Twice's clones cannot be dissipated with Aizawa's erasure quirk, which is actually really notable. But we see through this as well, speaking of erasure, we see that there's apparently an age reversing or age slowing quirk that Garaki has, and I assume the real Garaki has it too. Unless that was just a fake out by the clone, because when Aizawa used his erasure quirk, the Garaki clone started suddenly aging rapidly. And so it's thought oh, so he has a quirk that slows his aging. That's how All for One has lived for so long. And it's okay. But if he's a clone, does that mean the real one also has that or not? I don't know. But while the Nomus are coming up through the floor of the hospital, Mirko is fighting through Nomus herself and gets to the real Garaki. Unfortunately, it seems like Shigaraki is also down there, so that's a problem. It had already been mentioned that Shigaraki wasn't with the rest of the Paranormal Liberation Front at the moment, and so it seems like this is where he is, and that's a problem. That is very troublesome. Because if he wakes up and, comes out, that could spell disaster. Considering how his quirk evolved last season. But Mirko is being a badass. She catches up to the real Garaki, and we don't kind of see what happens from there yet. Assumedly, he would get captured, but we'll see. Unless this one's not the real one either. That is very possible. But it seemed like he was talking about like having his clone take the hit for him above. So maybe this one is the real one. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, the action has begun right off the bat, really strongly. We're just going straight into it. It's not holding back. It's not like waiting on anything. We're going straight into this war. And things are about to get very heavy. We see with the students, Kaminari and Tokiyami are on the front lines. For Class A, and for Class B, we have the Mushroom Girl and the guy who can like soften things like the ground and everything and can like kind of swim through it in a way. I can't remember the names of Class B students there, but they're on the front lines because their quirks can affect like a massive amount of area at a time, while others from the classes are in the back acting more as support and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this goes down. I'm very, very interested. This was a very good start. It was a very strong and intense start. And again, as much as the opening is good, like technically, and the song does work with the visuals, it doesn't work with the actual events of the series right now. It's so unfitting. In fact, it's actively ill-fitting. It is actively like diametrically opposed to the events of the series. And maybe that was their intent. Maybe the idea is they wanted the opening to be a little lighter hearted to kind of overset the intense tone of what's about to be going down. But I feel like it's just a bad idea. Because again, it breaks immersion. It destroys the feeling that the content is supposed to be giving you. If this is going to be intense and dark and scary and even at sometimes maybe feeling hopeless, that's what you're supposed to be feeling. Trying to cover that with a blanket of happiness it goes against what the series is trying to do. So even if that is their reasoning for making the opening so poppy and happy sounding, it just doesn't work. But all of that being said, I'm still excited to see more of this season. Like I said, I'm not going to do like an episodic review thing or anything, but I will let you know maybe what I think down the line if I feel there's enough to talk about. But yeah, and again, I'm sorry to everyone who expected or wanted me to react to this series. It's just, again, after the last season and all, as much as I loved it, I just feel like I would better want to watch this on my own time. It just feels better for that kind of series, and I just prefer it at this point, okay? And that might change. Maybe after this season, maybe I'll miss having reacted to it, and maybe next season I'll react again. I don't know. We'll see. In the meantime, though, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of the first episode of My Hero Academia Season 6? Let me know, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.